Hey guys, I want to do a little video on the Jeep Grand Cherokee ZJ rust and drainage, water drainage on the rear lift. In this video I'm going to cover what happens to the water that drips into the gutter, what's behind these ventilation panels, how that is related to this type of rust in the rear quarters. So we are behind the rear wheel well. And believe it or not, all this rust and water that caused the rust comes from above. The strategy the engineers had is water goes into the gutter, goes behind this panel, runs down the body, behind the taillight, and ideally down to the ground down here. But there's a lot of things mounted on this D-pillar and a lot of holes like that one behind this vent and behind the tail light that water can seep into. As you can see, the tail light is supposed to have a little pin that aligns with right here and a hole to receive it. Same with down here, a pin aligns from the tail light. And as far as I can reckon, that's where the majority of the water is dripping in behind here. As you can see, it's kind of wet back there. Quick tip to remove these vents. There's 3 pins. You're gonna need to pry gently up and they will release themselves from their little holes. To remove this vent, it just kind of clicks out. I stick my camera into the vent. You can see some water is dripping down, and Jeep knew that water would get in this vent, so they actually put a drain in at the bottom. That little hole leads to this tube right here. So we are behind the driver wheel well. And you can see there's a bit of moisture back here, and this is the tube that goes to that vent I was just showing. If you've ever looked up underneath your Jeep, you have probably noticed this weird black thing. This black thing is actually a tiny little drain valve. That this is a little rubber flapper. Any water that gets into this rear panel here is supposed to collect on top of this drain valve and drain out. My understanding is this little tail is supposed to align with that tube I was showing you and collect water from that tube, or direct the water from that tube to here. Obviously, this is pretty flexible and it doesn't really align. Behind here, there are several other places that water can get in. Whatever this cap is, it's not really sealed well, and I can see a lot of water is collecting right there. And the biggest culprit, at least in my case, is these holes where the taillight alignment pins line up to, and as water comes down, just drips into those holes. Showing those holes from the back side. That is one of the spots where the taillight alignment pin goes in, and you can see there's a lot of moisture right there dripping down to the bottom. This is the upper one. I'm sticking my finger on it from the outside, and again, moisture is dripping down from there. Now, looking sort of forward over top of the wheel well, it looks like there's even some water that drips through the seam. Actually, excuse me, that's the body seam where the filler goes in. So, you know, water is collecting down here and finding its way down into the Now I want to show off the rust that this has caused in my car. So right here, this whole section is rusted out. You know, that's supposed to be all solid right there. And on the other side, you can see where this part is solid, but over here we have holes, lots of holes here, and big gaping holes back here. Right on the other side of this panel right here is the pin that holds the bumper on, and I could probably rip that off right now if I so chose to. But I think a little metal repair, sheet metal work is in order here. Well, with a teeny bit more investigating, pretty sure that this rust here is caused by water drips down this weather seal. And then as it makes the bend, it drips in and a little bit slips behind this panel right here, but it all accumulates right down here, and that's where all that came from. Last little detail I want to show is potentially a sneaky way to get lights or cable or an antenna cable out in a very clean way. For a cleaner install than what I obviously have here, you can bring that antenna wire in, pop this out, and that opens up inside the vent, and then you could have your wire poke through one of these vents up underneath the vent panel and exit right out here. So good little spot to route your wire for your lights or your antenna or something like that.